Hey everybody, it's Cass and Court TV. It's your girl, Miss Public Info, here with the latest and greatest and sometimes hated updates of the most high-profile cases going on around the country. Okay, guys, we all called this one. I think we all got this one correct. The judge has dismissed the Drake lawsuit against Universal Music Group for the Just Not Like Us record. The judge said, there's nothing here. There's nothing here. There's nothing here. Okay. Now, we all talked about this. Everybody knows what this situation is. I kind of don't have to go through it. But for those of you who haven't been paying attention for, I don't know, for the last 100 years, Drake was suing UMG, Lucian Grange, and other folks connected to UMG, but mostly UMG and Lucian Grange, who is the top dog at UMG, and essentially said, you all knew that the Not Like Us record by Kendrick Lamar was damaging to my career. You knew that, what he was saying wasn't true about some of these certified lover boys, certified pedophiles, some of these lines in it, wasn't true. Uh yet you still put your money behind it, you put your weight behind it, you made it a hit record. You also, bought streams. UMG was saying, well, first of all, we've done the same for you. We've backed you financially. We've made the record, your record's what it is. We have invested millions and millions of dollars. Lucian Grange even said that in part of his answer. And yet you had no problem then. All of a sudden you have a problem now. And essentially, this was a rap battle. And no one in the history of hip hop has ever heard of a rapper suing because they lost a rap battle. You lost, you lost. And now we have the law on our side. And this is when the law really works so well, when you agree with it. And a judge, Judge Vargas, said, uh-uh, we're not going for this. Okay, so let's get into it. I'm going to bring the order up here and we're going to talk about this and we're going to go through this. Now, this Jeanette Vargas, the order just came in a few minutes ago. This was an opinion and an order, and I'm going to read it. This case arises from perhaps the most infamous rap battle in the genre's history, she says. The vitriolic war of words that erupted between superstar recording artist Aubrey Drake Graham, known as Drake, and Kendrick Lamar Duckworth, known as Lamar or Kendrick Lamar, in the spring of 2024. Over the course of 16 days, the two artists released 8 so-called diss tracks with increasingly heated rhetoric, loaded accusations, and violent imagery. The petulant song of this feud was Not Like Us by Kendrick Lamar, dealt the metaphorical killing blow. The judge has got a few bars up her sleeve as well. The song contains lyrics explicitly accusing Drake of being a pedophile, set to a catchy beat and propulsive bass line. Not Like Us went on to become a cultural sensation, achieving immense commercial success and a critical acclaim. Both Drake and Kendrick Lamar have recording contracts with the defendant, UMG Recordings. Drake alleges that UMG intentionally published and promoted Not Like Us while knowing that the song's insinuations that he has had sexual relations with minors were false and defamatory. Drake has brought this action against UMG for defamation, harassment in the second degree, and violation of section code and blah, blah, blah. Because the court concludes that the allegedly defamatory statements in Not Like Us are non-actionable opinion. The motion to dismiss is granted. Now, this was UMG that filed the motion to dismiss based upon the fact that they felt that there was no defamation that occurred here. And the judge, essentially, Judge Jeanette Vargas, has agreed with that. She concludes this first part of this opinion, which is the opinion part. She concludes her opinion with, because the court concludes that the allegedly defamatory statements in Not Like Us are non-actionable opinion, the motion to dismiss is granted. Now let's talk about that a little bit, and then we'll go back to the opinion and the order. She said it's non-actionable, that this was non-actionable opinion. This sort of goes on the legal basis as we sort of talk about art and how it is expressed, and how artists have a sort of a large sort of a window to express themselves, that people are allowed to say certain things. Now, in order to sort of claim that what, Kendrick Lamar and UMG said in the Not Like Us record, we would also is defamatory. We would also have to conclude, if the court agreed with that, the court would also have to conclude that every rap, album, every diss track out there, as it relates to the rap genre, is also defamation. But the court can't conclude that, because there is a little thing called freedom of expression. The other thing where the court is talking about that the accusation was based upon, saying that, this was he was a pedophile and all of this, and that this was defamatory. The court said this was non-actionable opinion, meaning this was their opinion, and it didn't really mean anything. It meant nothing. It doesn't mean anything, that they're allowed to say certain things in diss records. The other reason why, and during the course of this particular case and when it was being litigated before it was ultimately dismissed today, the other reason why the judge is saying this as well is because Aubrey Graham, Drake, was also just as defamatory, if you will, towards Kendrick Lamar. He called Kendrick Lamar a wife beater. He went on to talk about how instances where Kendrick Lamar was beating on his wife, though there is no factual information out there to conclude that. So if the judge were to sort of go along with this defamatory, that it was defamatory what Kendrick Lamar said about Drake, she would also have to conclude that what Drake said about Kendrick Lamar and his diss records was also defamatory. But it's non-actionable opinion, she says. And we're gonna go back to the order here and go in some of the legal standards. She goes on to explain why this is a non-actionable opinion. Now, we're not going to go through all of these pages because it's 38 pages, but I'm going to hit the highlights and talk about the judge and what she's saying are the legal standards in all of this. To survive a motion to dismiss, a complaint must contain sufficient factual matter accepted as true to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face. So, defamation, essentially what she's saying is, in order for this claim to have, continued in litigation, that this complaint would have had to had sufficient factual matter. There would have had to have been an actual person, as for example, that Drake was accused of being salacious with, that was underage in the song. That Kendrick Lamar in the song would have had to accuse him of being salacious or inappropriate with an actual minor in order to for this to be sufficiently factual. That's just an example of a point that could be sufficiently factual. For an example, she says that it would have to have been accepted as true to state a claim to relief that is plausible on its face. She's saying that there is no way that this claim, because it was said in a rap battle, because it was said in a very heated rap battle that was a tick for tat, that there was no way that this particular claim could be legally. Now, in the minds of y'all out there in the fandom land, maybe some of y'all do think that Drake is a pedophile, and that's on you. But she's saying, in terms of legal standards, there's no way that this particular line, certified lover boy, certified pedophile, could have been accepted as true legally. That there was never any cases, there's never been anybody to come out to say that he did this to them as a minor. That there's nothing there that sort of accept this particular claim as being true. So she says that blows him, Drake, out of the water right there. She goes on to say that a plaintiff may not simply allege facts that are consistent with liability. The complaint must nudge the plaintiff's claim across the line from conceivable to plausible. So what she's saying there is that it's not enough for Drake to say that this is defamation based upon folks thinking that this could conceivably be true, that he might be out there, perping underage girls, that there's some, credence to that, but that it would have to be plausible. Again, you would have to have specific examples, and Lamar Kendrick would have to have specific examples in his songs that would sort of point to the fact that this would be more plausible than conceivable, and not just a sort of artist expression made up about the song. She goes on, she says that when ruling on a motion to dismiss under Rule 12b-6, the court accepts as true all well pleaded allegations and draws all reasonable inferences in favor of the non-moving party. That essentially, that these allegations are have to be seen as reasonable, and the inferences always go in the favor of those that are essentially not making the claim. So the person that has the burden of proof, there it's not going to go in their favor. Why? Automatically be in their favor. Why? Because they have the burden of proof, and it's up to them to sort of raise the bar and actually prove that that this particular item, whatever is being accused in this particular case, the Not Just Like Us record, is actually defamatory. Now, that she's saying this is based on under Rule 12b-6 in terms of the motion in which was used to dismiss. So that shot him out of the water there. She goes on and she says the court need not credit legal conclusions couched as factual allegations. Again, the court need not credit legal conclusions couched as factual allegations. The court may also consider documents incorporated in the complaint by reference and matters of which judicial notice may be taken. Judicial notice is appropriate when a matter is not subject to reasonable dispute, because it is generally known within the trial court's territorial jurisdiction, or can be accurately and readily determined from sources whose accuracy cannot reasonably question. In other words, guys, Drake needed more people. He just didn't have the sufficient evidence, and under the rule in which this particular order was dismissed, Rule 12b-6, he had nothing, very, very little to go on. That this particular item here, the defamatory claim, needed to be seen as plausible, not just conceivably true, in order for the court to deem this as being defamation. That it would have to be plausible, that there would have to be examples within the music, examples within the claimed defamatory materials that essentially said that this was plausible to have happened, that it for the court to see this as to be legally true. Okay. So that's going to be it. Like, this is Drake is dead out of the water on the UMG lawsuit. We have been sort of keeping up with it. It had been a tit for tat. You guys can go into some of the earlier episodes where Cast and Court TV sort of followed this case from the beginning, where we were sort of going through and sort of talking about how, Drake was bringing up this lawsuit, that the lawyers were fighting. Drake was horribly horrified at the fact that UMG, he claims that UMG was buying streams to make the song #1 on Spotify, that it caused injury and harm to his career. He also brought up that the cover of the Just Not Like Us record was also artistically made up to show Drake as a pedophile, because it showed a sort of helicopter view of Drake's home, and then it showed pinpoints of areas, just like they do with the sex offender list, where the pinpoint, they have those little red flags, and it sort of showed where he lived there. And he says that depicted him as a pedophile. And then he went on to say that even after that there was a violent action taken against his home, and that he had a security guard that was shot on the premises due to the fact that Kendrick Lamar's song brought harm to him and his family, et cetera, et cetera. But the judge was not buying it. Now, one could also say that Drake is also put himself in harm's way, because even before Kendrick Lamar brought up, or even before they got into this battle, and Kendrick Lamar had this album cover, um, many people there in Toronto knew where Drake lived. Drake's address and where he lives in Toronto is well known there. That's been well documented in the media. So it's very surprising to me, or it was surprising to me rather, that Drake would bring this up. And again, I want to talk about Lucian Grange, because Lucian Grange, and we covered this in earlier episodes, was very to the point in the fact that he says, if you think I'm going around, approving promotional materials and marketing materials for any record under the UMG label, you've got to be kidding me. I am too busy for that. I deal with the highbrow things. I'm dealing with the multi-million dollar deals. UMG is a company that has several different companies under it, and I'm dealing with all of the finances as it relates to that. So I'm not sitting around, Drake, Aubrey, whatever you want to be called. I'm not sitting around, just out there trying to get you and approving marketing materials that could be damaging to your career. We have poured millions of dollars into your career. We're not into damaging your career. We're into, making it more of what it could be. Now here comes some competition on the label, and you're upset. You're mad because you lost the rap battle. That's essentially what's going on here. And there's not anything more than that. I think it's really great that this judge saw things the way that she did, because essentially she saw it for what it was. I think UMG did a really great job in this lawsuit as well, battling Drake's attorneys, who were absolutely fearless, essentially, in this particular lawsuit. They were willing to go the extra mile to litigate this thing. Now, let's be clear. Drake can appeal this if he wants. If he wants to spend the money and the time, he can appeal. Any dismissal or any spot in litigation can be appealed, or final opinion rather, can be appealed to a higher court, if the plaintiff wants to go through this further. Um, in Drake's viewpoint, this irretrievably damaged his career, damaged his name, damaged his reputation. So it is very plausible that Drake may appeal this and may decide to get a higher court's ruling on this. I could see that happening, moving into the Second Circuit, into the appellate court in the lower district of New York. I can see this happening. We'll see. Another thing that I thought was interesting here, because she sort of talks about other the background of all of this, and she talks about the background of what made her come to this decision. She says, additionally, the defendant requests the court take judicial notice of certain extrinsic evidence pursuant to Rule 201, and they go on to the federal rules of evidence. These exhibits include the lyrics of the songs released as part of Drake and Kendrick Lamar's rap battle. The dates on which these songs were released and the lyrics of these songs are not reasonably subject to dispute, and the songs themselves are, with one exception, all referenced in the amended complaint. Accordingly, the court will take judicial notice of Exhibits H through I and Exhibits K through O to the request of the judicial notice to understand the defendant's alleged statements in their necessary and proper context. The judicial notice of submissions that place defendant's comments in the broader social context to aid the court's determination of the adequacy of the plaintiff's defamation claims. And she goes on to talk about the amended complaint and the exhibits there, and essentially, let's see, the court also takes judicial notice of search results from the New York Times website. The court takes judicial notice of the existence of listed articles, but not the truth of their content. So essentially, the defendant, which is UMG, has asked the judge to take judicial notice in terms of the dates of when the songs were released as part of the rap battle, and the dates on which the songs were released, and the lyrics of these songs, she says, are not reasonably subject to dispute, and that the songs themselves are all referenced in the amended complaint. So she's just saying she's taking judicial notice of that, and this is part of the background. And then she goes on and takes additional judicial notice. Now, let's get to the part where you're talking about factual allegations. Factual allegations. A. Drake is a prominent recording artist and songwriter, among other public facing endeavors, and he's had a successful music career under UMG for at least 20 years. And, defendant through UMG holds exclusive publishing and distribution rights to Drake's music, as well as that of Kendrick Lamar. And then she goes on to talk about the root of all of this, that she tells the story essentially of the 16-day battle, which of course we're not going to go through, but she goes through and she talks about how that the diss track directed at Kendrick Lamar, that Drake started the entire fight, is essentially what she says. She says, Drake, you started this entire fight. That this all started over a diss track that was directed at Kenny, called Push Ups. And of course, she says Drake mocks Kendrick Lamar's height, his shoe size. She quotes the actual line, and she says that he questions his success. And she says a few days later that Drake released another diss track called or not diss track, but he released another freestyle called Tailor Made Freestyle, and what he used AI generated voices of Tupac and Snoop to go at Kendrick Lamar. Okay, and that in the track, he talks about that Tupac and Snoop Dogg talk about their disappointment of Kendrick Lamar, and that he hadn't responded to the Push Ups diss track. And she quotes it and she goes on. And then she says, in Drake, in his own voice, further taunts Kendrick for failing to come up with a satisfactory response, saying, I know you're in that New York apartment. You struggling right now. I know it. In the notepad, doing lyrical gymnastics, my boy. Drake also surmises that Kendrick was purposefully delaying his response because Taylor Swift had just released a new album. And then he quotes that. And then finally, Lamar fired back in Euphoria, and which was released on April 30th. And then, of course, she goes, into all of that and what was said and all of that. So I'm not going to go through all of that because we know what happened, and we know that Kenny went and just literally obliterated Drake. This is another topic in which I am not unbiased, by the way. I am from Los Angeles, y'all. So born and raised on a playground where I spend most of my days. Okay. Like I'm from LA. I'm an LA filet. I'm a South LA filet. And so of course I am a Kenny fan. And so of course I am very much unbiased about this particular legal proceeding. And the judge started this off, and she essentially says, you started this fight, Drake. And then when Kendrick did not reply, then you went on to goad him even more. So, what's up? What's up? You're the one that utilize AI to sort of pretend to be the heroes of Kendrick Lamar. Some of his heroes, of course, he's a mentee of Dr. Dre, but some of his heroes are some West Side legends, Tupac and Snoop, and you use those particular voices to express disappointment that he had not replied or responded to the push-ups diss. And then when Kendrick finally came back with his litany of prolific comebacks, now you crying. Now you crying. Now you crying. She goes on and she says, on May 5th, 2025, Drake responded in The Heart Part 6, directly denying Kendrick Lamar's allegations of pedophilia. And then she goes on and she says, he's quoted as saying, I never been with no one underage, but now I understand why this the angle that you really mess with. Just for clarity, I feel disgusted. I'm too respected. And if I was FINGing, that young girls, I promise I'd be arrested. I'm way too famous for this SHIT you just suggested. She says in the track, Drake further sneers that this angle was the SHIT, and quote, I expected, and accused Lamar of wanting to misdirect. She says that Drake also alleges that he had planted some of the information Lamar has used against him. Okay, that this was directly planted. She goes on, she says, Not Like Us was a huge commercial success. It has gained immense popularity on streaming and social media platforms. It has been streamed globally more than 1.4 billion times on Spotify alone as of April 2025. So the judge is breaking down the facts on Just Not Like Us. And of course, he received various accolades, and he went on to do this in the Super Bowl. So essentially, the reason why she's bringing up the fact that, Drake popped back at Kendrick Lamar for the pedophilia, um, accusations is she's proving her point. What she's saying is that you had your opportunity to get back at him for the pedophilia. You did that. And then further in the record, you say that you planted certain information for Kendrick Lamar to sort of bite on and to talk about. So therefore, like, this is can be seen as conceivable, as she said at the top of her opinion. This is seen as conceivable and not plausible because you say you planted the information for him to bite on, for him to talk about. So there you go. There you go. She says that the plaintiff brings claims for defamation, harassment in the second degree, and a violation of New York General Business Law Section 349 based on UMG's publication and promotion of Not Just Like Us. And then, of course, there was oral argument heard, and Cast and Court TV covered that on June 30th from both parties concerning the motion to dismiss and the request for judicial notice, which we've already talked about. She says that the complainant contends that he was defamed when the defendant decided to publish, promote, exploit, and monetize allegations that it understood were not only false, but dangerous. And I'm skimming down. And she says, a defamatory statement is one that exposes an individual to public hatred, shame, contumely, odium, contempt, ridicule, aversion, ostracism, degradation, or disgrace, or induces an evil opinion and one in the minds of right-thinking persons and deprives one of confidence and friendly intercourse in society. The issue in this is whether Not Like Us can reasonably be understood to convey as a factual matter that Drake is a pedophile or that he has engaged in sexual relations with minors. And she says, in light of the overall context in which the statements in the recording were made, the court holds that it cannot. In light of the overall context in which the statements in the recording were made, the court holds that it cannot, that Just Not Like Us cannot be reasonably understood to convey in a factual matter that Drake is a pedophile. And she said, this is based upon the fact that in light of the overall context in which the statements were made in the recording of Not Just Like Us, in light of the fact that this recording was a diss track, that was a response to a rap battle that was started by the plaintiff himself. You can't start a rap battle in this context of, saying that this person is this and that and questioning his ability to be a rapper and all of that. You can't start a rap battle in that light. And then when the kitchen gets too hot for you and they start saying you're a pedophile, for example, hollering and saying, time out, that's unfair. That's essentially what she's saying. That the pedophile certified Loverboy certified pedophile lyrics were made in the same gist or the same light in which Drake made his opinions and diss remarks and diss tracks about Kendrick Lamar. That's what he said. That's what she's saying. Fact versus opinion. She said under the First Amendment, there is no such thing as a false idea. Okay. Only assertions of facts are capable of being proven false. She said, moreover, the New York Constitution provides for absolute protection of opinions. Thus, courts must distinguish between statements of fact, which may be defamatory, and expressions of opinion, which are not defamatory, and have the full protection of the New York Constitution. Essentially, the Just Not Like Us record is what? An expression of opinion. And though there is more, ladies and gentlemen, that's where we're going to cut it off here at Cast and Court TV. The lawsuit has been dismissed for the reasons in which I've mentioned. And listen, he may appeal this. There's a very good chance I can see, Drake appealing this because he's a vengeful kind of guy. He really is. For to be so tall, he literally has a lot of short man's, complexes going on, or so-called short man's complexes going on. It's really odd to me. I've stood side by side with Drake, and I'm appalled. Or when I say side by side, I mean, right next to him, working with him and his team. And I am appalled at how, uh, you know, tall he was. I was very surprised that he was that tall just because, people are taller in real life than they are in actual, on television or where you see them or whatever. They're also thinner in real life too. But anyway, I digress. He was very tall, smells really good too. Good looking guy. And yet a lot of the bravado that he brings in his lyrics and his relationships with other people in music and hip hop is very, you would think he was an insecure, unfortunate looking guy that had all of these like self-esteem problems because he sort of contorts himself in that way, and it's very surprising to me. I'm still very taken aback by that. Okay, guys, thanks so much for joining Castle Court TV for today. We may be back a little bit later on with some more news, but this is going to be our main episode for the day. Definitely leave your opinions in the comments on what you think about this dismissal. Very interesting. Can't say that I'm surprised. We sort of talked. I didn't really give my read the tea leaves on this one. But I was hoping that it would be dismissed just because in the spirit of rap battles and sort of how we sort of deal with things in terms of, hip hop and music and all of that, that it wouldn't really be good for hip hop if this thing, continued to go on and actually, Drake won the litigation on this because of the fact that it would ruin how we look at rap battles and how we look at, competition in music, and particularly lyrically when it comes to rap. This whole thing I'm not like a huge hip hop head, but I do love hip hop, and of course I am more partial to West Coast hip hop than I am East, but I do like East Coast rap as well. But I have grew up in the 90s, and so I grew up in the age of the renaissance of hip hop, the real hip hop in the 90s. And I lived through, the East Coast, West Coast, battle, all of that, and all of the fun, rap battles that took place in hip hop in the 90s. I mean, that is where you could really see someone's lyrical prowess and if they are a lyricist that can stand up to another. And that's part of what all of this is. The fun and the allure of hip hop is for fans to sort of see if their, artist is really going to come back with a punch. I remember when just last spring, when the Just Not Like Us record came out, and when this rap battle was happening between Kendrick and Drake, that I was really excited. Like this was really like very exciting to wake up at 2 a.m. at 3 a.m. in the morning and know that Kenny had like released some crazy rap, a battle, some crazy like diss track against Drake, and that Drake was coming back with Family Matters, and all of this, it was just a back and forth. And I think after a while I was like, okay guys, like y'all can call it. But after a while I was like, no, they can't call it. They have to go. They have to continue to go as long as they can go. And Kenny put out Just Not Like Us, and it was the song of the summer. Okay. And then after that, Drake put his record out, and all of that. But then Kenny just, UMG, Kenny, they put weight behind it, and Drake was obliterated. I mean, to many people's opinion, other people don't have, some people don't have the same opinion. Like they feel like, Drake won the battle and that was the matter of it or whatever. And that's cool because Drake has, fans and people love him, and they're not going to stop being fans just because Kenny won the battle. But when you're talking about people who really are looking at hip hop in a very surgical way, people who, are, connoisseurs of hip hop in the non-fandom way, but they look at hip hop as a serious sort of lifestyle surgically in terms of lyricism. Those people all say that Kenny was the winner here. Okay, guys, we're gonna call it a day. Thanks so much for hanging with us. We will have this filing available for those of you who are court spectators and are part of our membership for you to thumb through all 38 pages of it. We'll put that up today. We'll make sure we'll get those other filings up as well. We've been kind of backed up here at Custom Court TV, but we'll get all the filings that we've discussed on the show up for everybody to see, and all of that. Also, please don't forget that this month is the month of October is domestic violence awareness. I want to make sure that you all are donating to charities, or even if you can't donate, just recognizing the month as being a domestic violence. We really need to put on the radars of those of us who are out here with influence, and those of us who have children, and those of us who have people in our lives who may be victims currently, and those of you who are survivors, to really sort of tell your stories. To those of you who are going through something right now, there are resources for you. I'm going to make sure we put those resources in the description box so you can take a look at those. And also, I'm going to spotlight a case tomorrow that is talking about partner violence, and we're going to cross over, intersect, and to not only the more traditional partner violence that people know of, where the woman is the victim, but also male victim partner violence as well. So please stay tuned for that. Thanks so much for joining today, and we'll see you tomorrow. Thanks, guys. Peace.